The message arrived without warning, and it ended 100 years of uneasy peace. Lieutenant Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of the Varity, watching a single line of text glow on the main display. Humanity is summoned to the sanctum of Ordis. Refusal will be considered an act of war. No explanation, no context, just an order. Delivered the way a master delivers an order to a dog it expects to heel. Cole had served aboard warships his entire adult life, but he had never felt the room go this quiet. "They've never summoned anyone to the sanctum," said the tactical officer beside him, voice low. "Not in 300 years. Not even during the Threll Uprising." Captain Leon Marsh didn't turn from the viewport. He was a tall man, unhurried in his movements, the kind of calm that unsettled people more than shouting ever could. "Then we should be curious," he said, not afraid. That was the first turning point. Not an explosion, not a battle, a choice. The Council could have sent a fleet to escort humanity like prisoners. Instead, they sent a summons, confident that fear alone would bring humanity crawling. Marsh's quiet refusal to be afraid was the first crack in that confidence, though no one in the galaxy knew it yet. The Varity was humanity's newest warship, built in secret over 11 years, crewed by 41 men and women who had been chosen not for rank or politics, but for one quality. They did not panic. Cole had asked once why the ship carried so few crew for something so large. Marsh's answer had stayed with him. Because everything essential on this ship can already think for itself. The crew isn't here to operate the Varity. We're here to decide when it should act. Few people understood what that meant. Cole wasn't sure he did either. Not yet. As the ship broke orbit and entered the long jump toward Council space, Ambassador Gerald Park came to the bridge. He was older than Marsh, silver-haired, with the unbothered patience of a man who had spent decades negotiating with people who assumed patience was weakness. He carried a small case under his arm. Data files, Cole assumed, though he would later learn held something far more dangerous than any weapon aboard the ship: evidence. "They think this ends with our surrender," Park said, looking out at the streaking stars. "Restricted technology. Reduced fleets. Council-appointed oversight of every colony we built. Will it?" Cole asked. Park smiled, and there was nothing bitter in it. "No, it ends with the truth. Whether they're ready to hear it is their problem, not ours." That was the second turning point of Part 1. The moment the audience realizes this was never a story about humanity begging for mercy. It was a story about humanity walking into the lion's den, already holding the proof of the lion's crimes. The jump toward the sanctum took 6 days. Cole spent them the way soldiers always spend a quiet before something enormous. Cleaning gear that didn't need cleaning, rehearsing conversations that would never happen the way he imagined, and watching Marsh, searching for any crack in that maddening calm. He found none. On the 5th day, Cole finally asked a question that had been eating at him since the summons arrived. "Captain, if they attack us there in their own stronghold, surrounded by their entire fleet, what do we do?" Marsh finally turned from the viewport, and for the first time, something flickered behind his eyes. Not fear, but a kind of quiet, coiled readiness, like a storm that had already decided where it was going to break. "We do what humanity has always done when someone mistakes our patience for weakness," he said. "We let them make the first mistake." The Varity dropped out of its final jump on the 6th day, and the sanctum of Ordis unfolded before them. A fortress 900 years old, vast beyond comprehension, ringed by defense platforms that had never once been breached, orbited by more warships than Cole could count in a single glance. A single human ship alone, in the shadow of an empire that had never lost a war. That was the third turning point. The image that would open every retelling of this story for generations. One small vessel, lights dimmed, drifting silently toward the most powerful stronghold in the galaxy, carrying nothing but 41 crew members, one folder of evidence, and an answer the Council did not expect. No, the word hadn't even been spoken yet, but everyone aboard the Varity already knew it was coming. The Council chamber was built to make visitors feel small. Cole understood that the moment the Verity's shuttle descended to the sanctum's outer ring, and into a hall so vast it seemed to swallow sound itself. 9 towering thrones circled the central floor, each occupied by a representative of a species older, larger, or more powerful than humanity had ever claimed to be. Beyond them, rows of guards. beyond the guards. Screens showing the human ship still sitting motionless outside, surrounded on every side by warships bearing the Council seal. It was meant to be intimidating. It was. But Marsh walked into that chamber the way a man walks into a room he already knows he'll be leaving on his own terms. Counselor Threxa Vaughn, eldest of the 9, did not waste time on pleasantries. "Humanity stands accused," she announced, her voice amplified to fill the chamber, "of violating the Ordis Accords, of secretly expanding military capability beyond sanctioned limits, of developing prohibited technologies without Council authorization." Every accusation was true. Cole felt his stomach tighten, because he knew it, and he knew the Council knew it too. Ambassador Park stepped forward, unhurried, and set his case down on the chamber floor. "All true," he said simply. The chamber murmured, some counselors leaning forward in open satisfaction. "And every violation," Park continued, "was a direct response to actions this Council took first, actions it never disclosed to the species it claims to protect." That was the first turning point of Part 2. The moment the trial flipped, Park didn't deny the charges. He confirmed them, and then aimed the same accusation back at the accusers. He opened the case. The data spilled onto the chamber's central display in clean, undeniable lines. Intercepted Council communications ordering the sabotage of 3 human colonies decades earlier. Manipulated trade routes that had starved 2 border systems into compliance. A hidden clause in the original Accords, buried in translation errors that were not errors at all, granting the Council legal authority to seize any human world it chose at any time, for any reason. Every restriction humanity broke, Park said, his voice never rising, was broken to survive policies this Council designed to make survival impossible. We didn't build weapons because we wanted war. We built them because you built the conditions for one, and hid it behind laws you wrote to protect yourselves, not us. Silence. Real silence, the kind that is weight. For a moment, one single moment, Cole thought it might actually work, that the truth, laid out so plainly, might be enough. Counselor Vaughn's expression didn't change. The Council does not answer to accusations from a species that has not yet earned the right to question it. That was a second turning point. The instant the audience understood the Council was never interested in truth at all. Power doesn't defend itself with evidence. It defends itself with silence and the assumption that no one will dare push further. Humanity's punishment, Vaughn continued, will proceed as planned. Full military disarmament, confiscation of the vessel Varity, direct Council administration of all human colonies, effective immediately. Marsh had not spoken a single word since entering the chamber. He did now. No, one syllable. It landed in that enormous hall, louder than any accusation Park had made. "You misunderstand your position," Vaughn said, something sharpening in her voice now. "You're not being asked." Marsh finally stepped forward, and Cole would remember, for the rest of his life, that his captain did not look angry. He looked almost sad. The way a man looks when he realizes a conversation he'd hoped to avoid has become unavoidable. "You're right," Marsh said. "We're not being asked. We're telling you. Humanity will not surrender its fleet. It will not surrender its colonies. And it will not kneel to a Council that has already shown us exactly what it does to species who trust it." That was the third turning point of Part 2, the point of no return. Every screen in the chamber flickered as, outside, more than 400 warships began closing formation around a single human vessel. The Council had asked for surrender. Humanity had just given them a war instead. Counselor Vaughn rose from her throne, and for the first time, real anger broke through her composure. "You would defy the Council with one ship?" "We would defy the Council with the truth," Marsh answered. "The ship is just where we happened to be standing when we said it, outside the sanctum. The human vessel Cole and the rest of the boarding party had left behind was no longer alone in open space. 412 Council warships had drawn into a tightening sphere around the Varity, weapons charged, waiting only for the order. That was the first turning point of Part 3. The moment the confrontation stopped being about words and became something the entire galaxy would be watching within the hour, as every Allied system sensors picked up the largest fleet mobilization in 3 centuries. "Return to your vessel," Vaughn said coldly. "Consider this your only warning. Surrender the Varity, or it will be destroyed, along with every soul aboard it. Marsh didn't flinch. You should reconsider that threat. You have 30 of your ships against 400 of ours. Vaughn snapped. There is nothing to reconsider. I wasn't talking about the numbers, Marsh said quietly. I was talking about what happens after you fire the first shot. The Council, confident in overwhelming force, gave the order anyway. Back aboard the Varity. The ship's systems have been waiting. Not idle, not defenseless, but patient, the way Marsh himself was patient, running quietly on a kind of restraint that looked, to outside observers, indistinguishable from vulnerability. When the first volley of Council fire lit up the void around the ship, alarms did not sound. No one aboard so much as raised their voice. The Verity's hull simply absorbed it. Energy that should have vaporized a vessel fraction of its size instead rippled across a shifting lattice beneath the ship's plating and vanished, converted, stored, redirected into systems most of the crew didn't fully understand themselves. Cole, watching remote feeds from inside the sanctum, felt his chest go tight with something between terror and disbelief. That was a second turning point, the moment the Council's overwhelming advantage stopped mattering. 400 ships had just fired everything they had at a target that walked away from it without a single scorch mark. Impossible, someone in the chamber whispered. It got worse for the Council from there. The Varity didn't fire back, not with weapons meant to destroy. Instead, precise, narrow beams lanced out toward the nearest Council ships, and one by one, their weapon arrays simply went dark. No explosions, no casualties. Just silence spreading outward through the fleet as ship after ship found itself alive, intact and utterly disarmed. Vaughn's voice, when she finally spoke again, had lost its certainty. "What is that ship?" Marsh answered, and his voice carried none of the triumph the Council might have expected. If anything, it carried regret. "Generations beyond anything you've built. We didn't come here to prove that. We came here to avoid ever having to." That was the third turning point of Part 3, the moment the balance of power in the galaxy quietly, irreversibly shifted, and every counselor in that chamber understood, for the first time in their long lives, what it felt like to be the smaller side of the room. Vaughn stared at the screen showing her fleet going dark, ship by ship, and for the first time said nothing at all. 200 ships disarmed, then 300. The Varity moved through the Council fleet with precision that felt less like combat and more like a lesson being taught to students who refused to sit still. Cole watched the tactical display in the chamber's corner and realized, with a chill, that not a single Council ship had suffered hull damage. Not one crew member had been harmed. The Varity was proving something far more unsettling than raw power. It was proving control, total, effortless control, wielded by a ship that could have ended 400 lives and chose, instead, to simply take away their ability to fight. That restraint was the first turning point of Part 4. It would have been easier, faster, and far more terrifying for the Council if the Varity had simply destroyed its attackers. Instead, humanity was showing something the Council had never once shown any species beneath it. Mercy, delivered with total confidence. "Order a full retreat," one of the younger counselors urged Vaughn, voice tight with panic. "Before there's nothing left of the fleet to retreat with." Vaughn didn't move. Pride held her in place even as the numbers on the display kept climbing. 350 ships disarmed, then 380. It wasn't strategy keeping her still. It was a simple human, or in her case, deeply inhuman, inability to accept that everything she had built her authority on had just been dismantled in under 20 minutes. Aboard the Varity, Marsh finally opened a direct channel to the Council chamber. His voice, calm as ever, filled the vast hall. "This ends now if you want it to," he said. "We are not here to destroy you. We came for a conversation. You chose a battle instead. We're simply finishing the one you started, carefully, so no one has to die for your mistake." That was the second turning point, the offer. A door held open by the very people who had just demonstrated they no longer needed to negotiate at all. It would have been so easy for the Council to take it. Most in that chamber, watching their fleet go dark ship by ship, understood exactly how much easier their future would be if they simply said yes. Vaughn looked at the offer the way a drowning woman looks at a rope she's too proud to grab. "Rescind your threats," Marsh continued. withdraw the demand for our surrender, agree to renegotiate the accords honestly, in the open, with every species present, not just the 9 of you behind closed doors. Do that, and this stops here. No further ships disarmed. No further harm to anyone. Silence stretched through the chamber. Even the guards seemed to be holding their breath. Vaughn's jaw tightened. Whatever calculation was happening behind her eyes, it wasn't the one Marsh had hoped for. The Sanctum, she said slowly, has defenses that fleet was never meant to test. That was the third turning point of Part 4, and it landed like a blade dropping. Somewhere deep beneath the ancient fortress, colossal defense platforms, dormant for 300 years, never once needed against any threat the Council had faced, began, silently, to wake. Marsh had given them a chance to walk away with dignity. The Council was about to throw it away completely. The Sanctum of Ortis had not activated its primary defense grid in 3 centuries. It had never needed to. No enemy had ever come close enough, or been foolish enough, to force the question. Now, deep beneath 900 years of stone and steel, that changed. Cole felt it before he understood what it was. A low vibration running up to the chamber floor, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Screens across the hall shifted, showing colossal weapon platforms unfolding along the Sanctum's outer hull. Structures larger than any single warship in the disarmed fleet, built specifically to end conflicts before they became conflict at all. That was the first turning point of Part 5, the moment the audience realizes the real fight hadn't even started yet. 400 warships had been a warning shot. This was the Council finally showing what it had kept in reserve for 900 years, confident that nothing in the galaxy could survive it. Counselor, an aide whispered urgently to Vaughn, "The defense grid is active. Say the word, and we end this in seconds." Vaughn's eyes hadn't left the display showing the Varity, small and steady, sitting exactly where it had been the entire confrontation. Not retreating, not maneuvering, simply waiting. "Fire," she said. The Sanctum's defense platforms unleashed everything they had. It wasn't like the fleet's assault, scattered, imprecise, absorbed and shrugged off. This was concentrated, layered, designed by engineers who had spent centuries preparing for exactly this kind of impossible threat. Energy converged on the Varity from a dozen angles simultaneously, enough raw force to crack a moon. For one terrible second, even the screen feeds went white with the intensity of it. That was the second turning point. The instant everyone in that chamber, human and council alike, believed the Varity was gone, Cole's hands went cold. Somewhere in that hall, he heard someone from the human delegation gasp. Then the light faded. The Varity was still there, untouched. Its hull hadn't so much as dimmed. Marsh's voice returned to the channel, and for the first time since the confrontation began, there was an edge to it. Not anger, but finality. "That was your last warning. I gave you 3 chances to choose diplomacy. You spent every one of them trying to prove a point that was never true." Vaughn's aide was already backing away from her seat, understanding, finally, what everyone else in the chamber had begun to grasp. The Council had just used its most powerful weapon, its final, absolute deterrent, the thing that had kept the galaxy in line for 9 centuries, and it hadn't even scratched the paint on a single human ship. That was the third turning point of Part 5. Not a victory, not a defeat, a revelation, delivered in silence, in the space where the Sanctum's greatest weapon should have left nothing behind at all, and instead left the Council staring at exactly how small they truly were. "Captain," Cole heard himself say quietly into his calm, not even sure Marsh could hear him. "What happens now?" Marsh's answer came a moment later, calm and final. "Now we turn out the lights." The Sanctum of Ortis had not activated its primary defense grid in 3 centuries. It had never needed to. No enemy had ever come close enough, or been foolish enough, to force the question. Now, deep beneath 900 years of stone and steel, that changed. Cole felt it before he understood what it was. A low vibration running up to the chamber floor, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Screens across the hall shifted, showing colossal weapon platforms unfolding along the Sanctum's outer hull. Structures larger than any single warship in the disarmed fleet, built specifically to end conflicts before they became conflict at all. That was the first turning point of Part 5, the moment the audience realizes the real fight hadn't even started yet. 400 warships had been a warning shot. This was the Council finally showing what it had kept in reserve for 900 years, confident that nothing in the galaxy could survive it. Counselor, an aide whispered urgently to Vaughn, "The defense grid is active. Say the word and we end this in seconds." Vaughn's eyes hadn't left the display showing the Varity, small and steady, sitting exactly where it had been the entire confrontation. Not retreating, not maneuvering, simply waiting. "Fire," she said. The Sanctum's defense platforms unleashed everything they had. It wasn't like the fleet's assault. Scattered, imprecise, absorbed and shrugged off. This was concentrated, layered, designed by engineers who had spent centuries preparing for exactly this kind of impossible threat. Energy converged on the Varity from a dozen angles simultaneously. Enough raw force to crack a moon. For one terrible second, even the screen feeds went white with the intensity of it. That was the second turning point. The instant everyone in that chamber, human and council alike, believed the Varity was gone, Cole's hands went cold. Somewhere in that hall, he heard someone from the human delegation gasp. Then the light faded. The Varity was still there, untouched. Its hull hadn't so much as dimmed. Marsh's voice returned to the channel, and for the first time since the confrontation began, there was an edge to it. Not anger, but finality. "That was your last warning. I gave you 3 chances to choose diplomacy. You spent every one of them trying to prove a point that was never true." Vaughn's aide was already backing away from her seat, understanding, finally, what everyone else in the chamber had begun to grasp. The Council had just used its most powerful weapon, its final, absolute deterrent, the thing that had kept the galaxy in line for 9 centuries, and it hadn't even scratched the paint on a single human ship. That was the third turning point of Part 5. Not a victory, not a defeat, a revelation, delivered in silence, in the space where the Sanctum's greatest weapon should have left nothing behind at all, and instead left the Council staring at exactly how small they truly were. "Captain," Cole heard himself say quietly into his comm, not even sure Marsh could hear him. "What happens now?" Marsh's answer came a moment later, calm and final. "Now we turn out the lights."